Right. So I've called the session Demystifying Skills Cloud because I think there's still a lot of mystery surrounding Skills Cloud, surrounding kind of what it is, how it works, what to do with it. And also I think people tend to overcomplicate kind of what the solution is in Workday. So I'm just going to quote Workday very directly on what is Skills Cloud really. And that is a machine learning powered remote collection of skills for workers and candidates to select from. You can use Skills Cloud to build qualification requirements and talent data without the need for additional maintenance. You can also use Skills Cloud to enable workers to tag skills to learning content, job catalog, flex teams, and projects. So I think one of the things that I've noticed when kind of companies start going through a skills transformation, when they start thinking about skills and what skills they want in the organization, how they're going to use them, it tends to be quite overwhelming. And everyone really wants to get a simple answer to some really complicated questions. And a lot of the times I hear, oh, Skills Cloud is the answer. Skills Cloud is the answer. And I think this is a really kind of good quote to start with because Skills Cloud itself is really, like in the simplest possible way, it is really just a collection of skills. So this is what Workday has called their kind of proprietary skills library. Every vendor out there has their own. So you've got your gloats, your fuel 50s, your degrees, your um, sky hives. Everyone has their own skills ontology. They all probably have a fancy name for it. And this is really just Workday's name for it. So Skills Cloud in itself is really in Workday, genuinely. The way that you turn it on, and I know some of you know that, is you tick a box and it says under that box, once you've ticked this box, there's no going back. So you cannot untick it. You cannot turn Skills Cloud off. It Once you enable it, you've enabled it and it's there forever. You can hide it, but it's still going to do its thing in the background. Now, what is the thing that it does? It collects data from your tenant, it collects data from all customer tenants, and then sends all of that data back to Workday. And that is the data, that is part of the data that they use to kind of, I guess, qualify and refine their set of skills that is in that ontology. So one of the things we always get asked every time we start working with anybody on skills and skills projects is, where does Workday get their data? What is the basis for the data? What are all the skills in Skills Cloud? How do we know what are the skills in Skills Cloud, et cetera, et cetera? We're going to get to all these questions, but the first question usually is, where does Workday get their data? How do we know that the data is good? So the first part of where Workday gets it is through that customer contributed data. So once you've turned on your Skill Cloud, you now understand that it's a machine learning powered list of skills. One of the things that you have to do as part of the turn on is select which data you want to share with Workday in regards to skills. So that is the customer contributed data. Workday also supplements that Skills Cloud data set with other data that they get from other sources. So they get public data sets, which means usually kind of scraping some sort of a public web page. They also purchase data sets, which are quite specific to skills. And then the final kind of check step in those Skills Cloud data set is their manual curation. So what we kind of didn't know, I think, at the beginning when we started to work with Skills Cloud, but we do know now, is that Skills Cloud goes through quite a lot of changes, cyclical changes on a schedule. And they do make pretty much thousands of changes on a quarterly basis. And some of that is automated. So when a skill has met a certain threshold, whether that is number of different customer tenants that the skill is maintained in as a maintained skill, or number of uses on an employee profile across all of the different customers, when they met certain criteria, those skills kind of get sucked into the Skills Cloud list of skills. But also there is a lot of manual curation going on because, as you might imagine, there is quite a lot of skills that are sound very similar, or are very similar, and different customers are going to have quite different ways of naming a particular skill. So what happens as kind of a last check step is that actual humans review what the skills being inferred are, for the new kind of Skills Cloud edition in that quarter, and also make connections, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, which are called synonym connections. So that's a little bit about the kind of the overall data set that goes into Skills Cloud. Now, I think one of the most confusing parts about skills is probably not what I was wanting to show. One of the most confusing parts about skills in Workday is that even though everything is called a skill, there are actually three different, very, very different types of skills in Workday. So the first type being what we've been talking about so far, which is the Workday Skills Cloud skills. But obviously, many different customers have, loads of different skills that are just not part of the Skills Cloud's kind of library of skills, which is why Workday allows you to create your own skills, which, depending on where you're looking at it in the documentation, can be called anything between internal skills, maintained skills, tenanted skills. You can hear all these names, and they all mean the same thing, which is that it is a kind of centrally created, customer maintained list of skills. And then there's a third type, which is called crowdsourced skills, which are really user generated skills. So those are the skills that if you've kind of, ideally, you've gone through Workday Skills Cloud, there are no skills there. You've also gone through the kind of the maintain list, no skills there, and then you can just create your own if you really cannot find it anywhere else. Now, let me talk first about the Skills Cloud skills. So as we said, it's a Workday curated skill list of skills. I have seen numbers kind of fluctuate anywhere between 50,000 and 250,000. I think it is probably closer to that second number, because they say that they have 50,000 canonical, which to me means that it's 50,000 that they've really defined as a kind of a base ontology, and then 200,000 of those recognized. So from all the different data sets that have inferred, and all of the kind of customer tenants, the skills that are being added, and that number is constantly changing and shifting. Ideally, without intervention, without kind of messing with any of the settings around skills in Workday, Workday Skills Cloud will be the basis for anything where you want to use skills in Workday. So when you're an employee looking for skills to add to your profile, when you're a recruiter looking for skills to add to your job posting, when you start searching for something, the first results that are going to pop up are always going to be Skills Cloud results. One of the good things and also limitations about Skills Cloud skills in Workday is that they are, once you turn it on and once you give people visibility of skills, Skills Cloud skills will always be visible to employees. They will always appear in search queries. And very importantly, there is no way for you to choose the ones that you want and disregards the skills that you don't want. So once you have Skills Cloud on and people have access to skills, they will have access to the entire library of Skills Cloud skills. Partly because of the experience, and partly because it is a data set that Workday uses to make inferences and to maintain their Skills Cloud kind of environment. They don't want to bias those data sets. So that is, as I said, both a blessing and a curse, because a lot of customers, what they want is they want to limit the amount of skills that are in their tenant. They want people to focus on very particular skills. Usually it's kind of between, a few hundred and a few thousand skills that they have defined as really important skills. And so that is usually a conversation that we have to go through to make sure that they're aware that once they have Skills Cloud on, there's a lot of kind of change in comms that needs to be put in place, because technically you cannot limit that. Now, a good part about Workday Skills Cloud is that, I mean, the best part about Workday Skills Cloud is that it is maintained by Workday. So all of the translations, all of the metadata connections between the different skills, all of the inferences, that is all maintained by Workday. It's translated into, I think at the moment it's 16 languages and they keep adding other languages. So once you're using Skills Cloud, if you have users who are on a different kind of locale, they will have that, they will have their local language, their preferred language as the basis for the skills algorithms, which is not the case with tenanted skills. They also contain metadata on skills relationship with other skills. I will immediately anticipate a question. Can you see that metadata? Unfortunately, no, you cannot. So you can see it sometimes in the experience. And a lot of what we do with Skills Cloud is really testing how it works and kind of pressure testing certain scenarios and different kind of ways of interacting. So you can see that, for example, if you have recruiting on an employee profile and talent acquisition, for example, on a job, that job will be suggested to the person, even though there isn't the same skill isn't on both the profile and the opportunity. And that's because Workday understands in the metadata that recruiting and talent acquisition are close enough for that person to be a good candidate for that opportunity. And yeah, Workday Skills Cloud can kind of be used anywhere. You can sort them into category groups. You can sort them into categories. You can put them on job profiles, employee profiles. We're going to go through that in a second. You can also make them critical. So there's quite a few options for you to manage skills in the background, Workday Skills Cloud. But unfortunately, none of those options actually influence the UI. So apart from skills categories and skills category groups, which sometimes appear on drop-down lists when you're looking for skills in Workday. And again, I will say not always, sometimes. Other than that, there's no way to really influence the UI of Workday. So many times we get the question of, can we mark our important skills in some way in the organization and have that be a visible part of skills management? And that's not something that Workday does at the moment. Another question we often get is whether you can add skills definitions to skills in Workday. And the answer to that is not at the minute. That is a roadmap item. So we don't really know the details, but it's targeted for, well, we hope it's still targeted for release 1 2025. But we don't know whether it'll be flexible to add skills definitions or not. Right, so that was Skills Cloud skills. Now, let me talk a little bit about internal skills or maintained skills. So these are skills that if you've gone through Skills Cloud and you've really seen that there is nothing equivalent or nothing similar enough to the skills that you use in your organization, you have the opportunity as kind of the customer to define another set of skills that are important for your organization, which can be like internal or maintained skills. A big part of the confusion around Skills Cloud comes from the fact that they work very differently in the background, but the front end, so what the employee sees or what the recruiter sees when they're adding skills to job requisition, or what whoever is working with skills in Workday other than administrators sees in the UI, there is no difference whatsoever between a Skills Cloud skill and a maintained skill. You don't even know which one it is if you are just looking at a list of skills, because they don't mark them in any way. However, the really important difference between Skills Cloud skills and maintained skills is that maintained skills are a lot less powerful for any matching, for any kind of smart behavior in Workday than Skills Cloud skills are. And I'm sure to anyone who works with machine learning in any way, that makes perfect sense, because that is a data set that is limited to the customer tenant only. So you have essentially added your own data on top of what is already maintained by Workday. And as such, it cannot work in the same way because it doesn't have all the different connections, all the kind of background metadata that Skills Cloud skills have. Now, normally in customer tenants, these kind of internal or maintained skills are limited to administrator roles. So there's usually quite a big sort of discussion around what those should be. And as part of that discussion, it really is our jobs to keep reminding the customer that those maintained skills should really be used for the skills that you really cannot find in Workday Skills Cloud. Um, and that tends to be a bigger job than it sounds from the outset. And that they should be kind of kept to the smallest number possible because of the large impact that they have on the machine learning functioning. If you dig really, really deeply into Workday documentation, they will tell you that they are included in machine learning matching. However, there's a couple of limitations there. So it has to be an exact textual match between the profile and the opportunity. They also only work in English. And they will only work if they have been used more than 20 times on any instance. So if you have a maintained skill that is on, let's say, less than 10 job profiles and employee profiles in general, or it's less than 20, but it's any number between 0 and 20, they will just purely not be included in matching. And also they don't work for candidate matching. So there's quite a few limitations there once you start digging into it. So even though Workday does say, and it is true, that maintained skills can be part of the matching algorithms, in reality, they are quite a lot less powerful for the matching algorithms than the Workday Skills Cloud skills are. And what ends up happening is if you have multiple skills on a job requisition or job profile and an employee profile, and some of these skills, let's say you have 10 skills, some of these skills are Workday Skills Cloud skills and some of them are maintained. Again, the user doesn't really know which one is which. What will end up happening is that Workday will make its own kind of connections and is really going to do all of those connections on Skills Cloud skills first. And it's very rare that you see kind of maintained skills really influencing matching in any meaningful way. However, they can be used. A lot of customers use them, especially for kind of really deep technical skills that may not have been part of the Skills Cloud library because they're so specific to a particular industry or a particular kind of way of working that the customer has. Um, Last bit is that for maintained skills, why they are actually quite important and why when there really aren't other Skills Cloud skills that you can use, it is so crucial that you do use maintained skills is because Workday uses that as one of their primary sources for determining which skills should be part of Skills Cloud in the future. So if they see that a good number of customers are using a particular skill or a good number of users inside of one customer tenant are using a particular skill, they will consider it for inclusion. So they will look for kind of connections with that skill and the other data sets, et cetera, et cetera. One of the one of the big choices that you have to make when you're setting up skills in the tenant is whether you want to make sure that whatever skill you've set up as a internal tenant and maintained skill is preserved for the future. Or whether you are okay for Workday to kind of override it with a synonym if they do indeed find a synonym. So that might mean, for example, that you have a skill called computer literacy, but Workday includes a skill called basic computer skills into their library. Now, those are not the same, they're not a textual match, right? But in reality, they are the same thing. So basic computer skills, computer literacy, it's almost synonyms, right? So what you have to decide, I guess, as a customer, and it's quite an important decision, is whether you are okay for Workday to make that decision for you, or whether you want to preserve your case, in which case you have a lot more manual work. So that means that whenever there is a new release, you have to pull a report and go through a few thousand changes and be like, yes, okay for that one, no, not okay for that one, depending on obviously how many skills you have in the tenant. Now, last kind of version of skills is also the least useful, which is the user-generated skills. So that is skills that kind of is pretty much create my own. And that can be either employees or candidates. Now, in an active tenant for internal jobs, that can be completely switched off. So you can decide not to allow your employees to create new skills, and that is very much a decision that we would recommend. Reason being, well, there's a few reasons, but essentially those skills do end up being kind of junk data. So they're really only visible to the employee who created the skill. They cannot be added to categories. They cannot be made critical. They don't appear in search queries. They can't be translated. So all of the ways in which a skill can be useful inside of a tenant is not true for crowdsourced skills. Now, crowdsourced skills, I think, used to be a lot more important back when Skills Cloud was much smaller, much less validated, and needed a lot more data sources. I think now it's probably a little bit discouraged to go live with crowdsourced skills. However, a significant source of crowdsourced skills does remain candidate skills, because if you are using skills in recruitment, if you're using skills on job requisitions, and job postings in particular, people can add their own skills. Now, obviously, they're not yet connected to your tenant. So if that candidate becomes an employee, they may have skills that are neither maintained nor Workday Skills Cloud skills, which then get converted into crowdsourced skills. They will continue to live on that employee's profile, but they won't really be used for anything beyond that. Now, I know I've talked quite a lot already, so I'm just going to pause there and see if there are any questions at this point before I continue on why this is important. No, okay, I've talked you all into submission there. Perfect. So I hope everyone does understand kind of the difference between the three types of skill. This is just another way of showing it. I think we're going to send out this deck afterwards. It contains a lot of slides. I'm not going to talk through all of the slides, but if you are working with skills, or if your customer is asking you anything about kind of skills, or give them a little bit of an overview, you can pull from this deck to kind of give them that. Right. So why are all of those skills decisions important, and why do we have to talk to so many people about it, and why, why is it a little bit different, I guess, than most other areas of Workday? So skills is usually the first thing that many customers experience, where the decisions that they're making are quite permanent and very difficult to undo. And secondly, they're used across a really large number of areas. So if you look at kind of what a skill is and why it's important, it is pretty much used across the hire to retire Workday experience for both an employee or different security groups that work with skills. So skills can be added to job catalog. Skills are used or can be used in recruitment and onboarding. Skills can and are used in making talent decisions, in making workforce planning decisions, in learning, and also employees have kind of quite a lot to do with their own skills. So when companies start looking at becoming more skills-based organization, when they start looking at what their skill strategy is going to be, when they start kind of figuring out what they're going to do with skills and how they're going to use them and what are the priority use cases, a lot of times we see that the different areas that used to have their own little, fiefdoms, either full technical fiefdom of an area, or just, within Workday, you're kind of you are used to making your own decisions and not having that many people influence them, such as in recruiting, or in job catalog management or in learning, for example. It's kind of usually a set team that makes decisions and owns them. When you start introducing skills into the mix, it really becomes quite a lot more complex, because you all the decisions that you're making around skills usage and skills management are are used across a number of areas. However, they're still set up the same way. So a good example of that might be, recruitment and onboarding are really focused on the skills that an employee has. They might want to prioritize skill levels. They might want to prioritize kind of verification that you actually have a skill, validation that you have a skill. Whereas learning, for example, they don't particularly care about that. They want to know what skills you want to develop. They want to know what you want to target your skills development at and how you want to do that. So which part of that you prioritize, both of them are big jobs. Which part of that you prioritize becomes a decision that is far larger than one area. So things that sound like really simple questions to answer become really long discussions with many, many different stakeholders. And that translates to kind of how skills appear in Workday. So there's loads of places where they appear, but they're all always going to be the same skills. So you've got skills on profile, both employee and candidate. Those can be all three types, like we discussed before. You've got skills in the job catalog, and here it's really important that the job catalog skills, I guess, they follow a particular inheritance chain. So you can put skills on the job profile. Those skills can then be inherited by a position, which is really kind of the main core of where skills are being held against kind of what you're doing. And then those are also inherited by the job requisition and the job posting. At any point in that chain, you can adjust the skills that are there, depending on obviously security privileges. As we said before, those can only be Skills Cloud or maintained skills. Um, Workday has been working a lot in this area, so they keep introducing new features and new things. So for example, for skills and job catalog, you can add levels now, and you can also make those skills required or make them optional. Um, Skills matching and recommendations. So this is primarily for your kind of hub experiences. So Jobs Hub, Career Hub, Manager Insights Hub, and in some small way, Jobs Hub as well. They match the kind of employee candidates to all the different types of opportunities that are there. Both jobs, which we already talked about, so gigs, flex teams, mentorships, connections, learning content, everything that contains skills explicitly can be matched to an employee and vice versa.
Yes.
And I think she lost connection. I can pick up a bit while she gets back online. For me, the skills cloud, the most important thing to kind of keep in mind is when the customers say they want to start talking about skills. So there is a slide later on about the journey. Each customer is in a different stage in that journey. A lot of them don't even have skills. So for them to jump into skills, cloud skills is maybe not always the best thing. It depends on where they are. So if they have a set of skills, they're often very attached to that. Then we need to do a matching between the skills to see how far they are matching with skills cloud, and do we then do a combination of the different types of skills for them to continue. But it's important to find out where are they in the journey, and what of the other attributes they have got in place. Your job catalog, which
Hello?
drives your skills. Hi, Leia, we lost you. So I've talked about the customer, what they want.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. My internet just decided to give up.
It's
which is not
mundane.
great.
Yeah. Can you maybe go to the journey slide?
This one,
And we,
yeah.
yeah, we talked a bit about where they are on the journey. But you've
Yeah.
spoken a lot about the details of skills, which I think most people kind of get.
Hmm.
Maybe we can talk a bit about the journey and then also what is new that Workday brings in. So the hard score stuff
Oh,
where
I
they
don't.
will try to automate that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I guess I was just gonna go a little bit through what else kind of Workday does with skills, and also what are the kind of what is the difference between competencies and skills, but we can skip over that bit for now. So journeys, right? To become a skills-based organization, like we spoke about, I think it's quite a complex transition for a lot of people. So when we start talking to someone, usually they're usually already using Workday for kind of some of the basic talent elements, your assess potentials, your different sort of sometimes nine box calibrations, etc. And they want to start using skills with that. So the first part of doing that is making those different decisions on skills that I spoke about and different sort of areas that skills touch. Usually start having a bit of a say on how skills are being implemented, which skills are implemented, how many of those are maintained, how many, how you use Skills Cloud, how you kind of guide people to select the right skills. And so that becomes the skills cloud implementation. But I guess you're always implementing skills for a reason, right? Skills themselves are not a reason to do something. It's usually to either help the employee experience through setting up Career Hub, focusing on kind of personal development, focusing on having a more personalized experience of development in a particular organization, or for the business side to make sure that you have an awareness of where you have different skills and different talent and how you can utilize them best, whether that's through workforce planning, whether that's through kind of allocating jobs and development plans, et cetera, et cetera. So usually after kind of implementing Skills Cloud is the next question is kind of what do you want to do with those skills? Do you want to really focus on employee development, which, then usually becomes kind of a career hub launch and making sure that people have opportunities, they have a carrot to make sure that their skills are updated and that they're getting relevant recommendations for that, or whether you want to focus more on the business side. And again, that can mean a lot of different things, usually building out reporting, making sure that that is included in different workflows, particularly in recruitment and workforce planning. Manager Insights Hub is definitely part of that kind of journey and transition, because at the moment, Manager Insights Hub is really the only place where anybody can see what you're seeing in your own career hub. So managers are kind of given a bit of a special permission to see kind of what you are being recommended as a learner or as an employee. Um, and then there's a couple of things that we always talk about when we get into talking about skills-based organizations, um, that this kind of area unlocks as challenges. So first being tech and data infrastructure. So skills is all well and good while we're just talking about Workday. There's still a lot of decisions to be made. There's still a lot of things that you want to make sure you're kind of optimizing for the future, because like we said, a lot of these are not really going to be you're not really going to be able to roll them back, or it's going to be quite difficult. However, when you start adding other technologies into the ecosystem, it becomes a lot more of a struggle, right? So most organizations are already using skills in some type of way, and a lot of them already have another usually provider or vendor that they're using skills with. So having a really, really proactive and thoughtful approach to how you're going to manage those skills between the different systems that you're potentially using is probably the first conversation to be had, and that can be quite complex. Then next up, especially if you're using more than one system, is skills identification and mapping. This, for me, contains broadly two really important bits. One being pinpointing what are the critical skills for your organization and how you're going to lead people to really select those skills so that the machine learning algorithms can operate better. How you're going to align them with roles so that they have more to work with. And also how you're going to maintain that mapping between potentially the different systems that you have. So are you okay with people seeing, two different things that mean the same thing? Think back to computer literacy, basic computer skills. Or are you, committed to making sure that if you see one thing in one system, is the same thing in a different system? They come with different pros and cons, obviously, from comms and change to kind of how the system works. And it is usually our job to lead them through decision making on this. Then next up is skills development and skills development decisions. So how, I guess, once you have all of that information on skills, once you start on that journey of both employees and HR and getting used to working more with skills and getting used to skills being more of a foundation for a lot of the things that you do, both for yourself as an employee and also as HR for the people that you support. How are you going to continue invest? Like, how are you going to use that information? Because I think a lot of people they have that question around like, why am I doing this? What is the ultimate outcome that I'm trying to get to? And you're always going to have like 20% of people who, regardless of what technology you're using, regardless of how complicated it is, they're always going to do the thing that you want them to do because they're really focused on, progressing within the organization and progressing as themselves. And then you always have a quite a big proportion of people who are just not as engaged and are only really going to be engaged if they see what is in it for them. So that's why kind of having a clear strategy around what you're going to do with this information, how people are going to kind of feel the difference of what you're now doing is really important. Um, Equally, performance management and talent acquisition go through, and usually as part of this transformation, go through quite a big change. So in performance management, there's a lot of different ways that you can adjust performance management for kind of becoming a more skills-based organization. It's probably not the first thing you're going to do, but it is one of the more important things that you're going to do if you are really committed to kind of skills, becoming a more skills-based organization. And the same goes for talent acquisition, right? So how do you use that information? Where do you use it? Where in the workflow? How do recruiters access it? There's usually a lot of kind of access information that, access challenges that you have to solve. And then finally, I think one that I personally have never yet really worked on is the reward strategy. So I think that is kind of everyone's end goal, is to end up in a place where they're so kind of confident in the skills data that they have that they're able to use that data for in the world of reward, right? And differentiate reward based on the skills that you have, the skills that you're developing, and how valuable those skills are going to be to the organization that you work in. Um, like I said, I've not yet had an opportunity to work on that. I hope I will. But that's definitely the end state for most companies that we talk to. And then I think last challenge that I'll talk about here is the culture shift. So I think skills, again, all well and good. HR is usually easy to sell on the proposition of, you you can work in a more data-based way if you utilize skills. But I think people tend to underestimate how much work is non-technical and how much of the work really is based on adapting on change in comms, on driving the culture from the top, and on defining the carrot, right? The what's in it for me. So that's kind of where a lot of the conversations happen. And the technical part of it usually kind of takes up quite a bit of time. But after you've resolved most answers to these questions and have agreement on a lot of it. Again, I'll pause there and just see kind of where we are. Any questions? Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, Lea. Miriam is here. I have no questions.
Okay, fab. Right. Then I'm just going to cover this very last thing that I had on my list, which is kind of the skill interactions per persona. So lots of different personas in Workday. And I think one of the first questions we always get, and again, we're going to send this deck out so you can have this, is, where do people see skills, and where can I see skills in, as I don't know, whoever I am, HR, talent partner, employee, manager, and how can we manage that? So I think this is what we've created, a little bit of a list around kind of what are the different interactions that people can have with skills as they kind of cycle through the different personas. So I think one of the first and most important interactions is when you're a candidate. So if an organization is already using skills, then if they're using it, especially in recruitment, you'll see that for the first time as a candidate. So you usually have to enter some skills, and those are used during the kind of the back end work for recruiters and sourcers. As a candidate, when you're uploading your CV, Workday can and will scrape your skills and suggest them to you. You can still adjust them manually, but that's what you'll see. And then if you sign up for the kind of the talent hub within Workday, you have a candidate profile. That candidate profile has skills. Is going to use those skills to suggest different opportunities to you within that same organization. And also you can utilize skills to search for jobs. If you are a candidate within the organization, you can also utilize that search in the Jobs Hub. The talent acquisition partner, so the recruiter, sourcer, whatever kind of talent acquisition role you're playing, you have access to candidate skills match analysis, whether those are internal or external candidates. In some processes, if you've set it up that way, you can also be recommended candidates based on the skills that they have. I think really important thing to note there, which we get a lot of questions about, is whether the machine learning is using any sort of leveling or verification to make sure that it's recommending the relevant candidates for you. And the answer to that is not yet. So that is on the roadmap. But right now it's really looking at skill to skill. So there is still quite a bit of work after that to make sure that A, the people have the skills that they've said they have, and B, that they have them at the right level for the role that you're looking for. And then another way in which this is making kind of recruiter and sourcer lives easier is that if they're opening a job rec, you can also utilize Workday to suggest skills for you based on whether you have skills on your job architecture, so in your job catalog or on your positions. They may or may not inherit directly, but you can always utilize kind of the suggestions for that. And that's usually a big discussion around whether to enable that or not. I think probably the primary two personas that use skills in Workday are the employee and the manager. So employee can have multiple skill entry points, but typically it's tied to a process. So many organizations choose to go live with skills in the same time that they choose to go live with Career Hub. So it's kind of a natural entry point because you have to enter skills as part of entering Career Hub. You can enter skills and skills interest, and you can get suggestions for both based on different sources. There is a little bit of detail on the sources in this deck, so I'll send that out as well. And then once you've gone through all of that, you get skills-based opportunity matching. And that opportunity matching can mean anything that you have configured in your tenant that you have access to. So if you have flex teams or gigs, it will be the skills will be utilized to match you on that. If you have learning, it will also match you to kind of learning based on your skills interests. If you have mentoring set up, it's going to match you to the mentors that have the skills that you are interested in. So there's quite a lot of different ways in which it utilizes skills to drive your personalized experience. And then again, depending on how much of the skills ecosystem you're using, one of the more important parts is the skill levels. So there's also ways to validate those skills levels. Confusingly, there's three ways of doing that, which is skill endorsements, which are very clear kind of yes or no, skill ratings, where you can rate somebody's skills, and also skill assessments, which are now a very new kind of business process in this area. And then finally, you can drive performance and development paths. So in particular, Workday is working a lot currently on the career pathing product. So within Career Hub, you can kind of chart your own path through the organization and how you want to develop. As for managers, if they have Manager Insights Hub, that is kind of a skills and skills interests are a very essential part of that experience. And also they can see the recommendations that are being presented to their employees and their teams. And use that to foster growth, to assess performance, et cetera, et cetera. And also that information is always available, especially the recommendation information, which can help them kind of help their employees develop the critical skills and invest in critical talent. One of the things that I think are really important to define and sometimes quite difficult for HR to get over is how do then HR roles use skills and who has access to what and why do they have access to it? So I think a really big part of any skills project is reporting. So making sure that all of that information isn't just being put into Workday so that you can have a nice experience in Career Hub, as much as that is really important. I think there's a very crucial bit, which is also kind of around defining how does HR use this? What do they see? Why do they see it? What questions they're trying to answer with that, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the times we start from just asking the questions around, what are you expecting HR to do with this? What do you want them to do with this information? And what answers should they ideally get from reporting that we can build? And usually that is some version of analyzing the pipeline of talent in the areas that they support, helping personalize career journeys, helping kind of managers help their employees personalize career journeys, and then obviously enable career and internal mobility. And then finally, there's always an admin role, obviously, but as we talked about, kind of maintaining the skills ecosystem is really important. So there's usually some sort of a skills admin role or an organizational admin role, which maintains the kind of foundational data around skills. So configuring skills attributes, maintaining the list of internal skills, and then also maintaining all of the job catalog skills, which can be quite a big job. And then finally, there's a few slides down here around the different skills interactions per persona. I'm not going to talk through the detail of them, but that is quite a useful kind of slide deck for if you're trying to walk through with your stakeholders around like how will people interact with skills? When are they expected to interact with skills? We've got some nifty slides kind of on the life cycle and where people are kind of interacting with that. So yeah, that was, I think, it for me. I'm going to pop back to what is Skills Cloud really and just, yeah, ask one last time if there's any questions or comments, or if you just want 8 minutes of your life back. I am going to take that as everyone wants 8 minutes of their lives back. So yeah, I hope this was useful. I think many of you know if you have skills questions, let me know. We can always chat. I think when you get into working with Skills Cloud, there is so much more that you start asking, and there's so much more that you start digging under the surface and figuring out. But from my experience, and I think Merelda, Steenie, kind of Teed, everyone can attest. Every single client has such different questions that you really have to dig really deep to find these answers. And because they're so dependent on other areas, it's usually quite unique. So yeah, it's a very creative area of Workday to work in. And I encourage you to learn more about it. So yeah, thank you everybody for your time and have a lovely rest of your week.